back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 22 minutes past the top of the hour. Welcome, Chris Mays, the reformer.
Thanks.
And just a reminder to listeners, this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. It will be online later today at brattleboro.tv. And broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. Chris, tell us what's happening with the Gathering Place in Dover.
They're finishing up a bunch of renovations at the former First Walk restaurant.
Yeah.
And they're getting people registered. They're expecting, I think, about 15 to 20 participants to start when they open, and a lot of them are going to be coming from the Brattleboro Center.
Oh, really?
It's an adult day service center, and so a few years ago they identified a need for a satellite location and in the Deerfield Valley, and they were looking at different sites. At one point they were thinking about going into the former Twin Valley High School in Wilmington, but then this site popped up and they grabbed it.
Yeah, this is elder care is something that's really needed in the Deerfield Valley area, so it's great. Now, you said a number of the folks will be coming from the Brattleboro Center. My guess is they're folks who live in the Deerfield Valley and now just won't have to travel quite as far.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Okay. And, there's been a lot of, when I talk to folks from the Gathering Place, there's been some ramp up for the satellite site, and they needed to hire some people. They needed to get, of course, participants. They needed to get the building ready. It sounds like all of that's kind of come together.
Yeah, I was in there, I think it was last week, and they were doing all the floors. They had the windows done. They had drapery and all, and they were really plugging away. They had the IT guys there setting up the systems.
And sorry, remind me, when do they think they'll be open?
I think it's mid-May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
their
coming
goal.
up.
Yeah.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah.
Staying in Dover, the Dover Selectboard is wrestling about whether or not to have a dispensary in Dover.
They're talking about having an ordinance that would basically not allow marijuana dispensaries, medical or not. There's a group, it's two residents from Wilmington, and they proposed a dispensary, a medical marijuana dispensary, and they would still have to go through the process with the state with getting a license and all. But they said that there's a high number of people in Dover and the Deerfield Valley who have their medical marijuana cards. So this would save them a trip to Brattleboro and Bennington, which is a big deal in winter.
Mm-hmm.
But the police chief, he's been opposed to having a dispensary in town for a long time. A few years ago, he had actually proposed putting in an ordinance against dispensaries in the town plan, but he was told they were too far along in the process to do such a thing, and the select board back then wanted to get voter input, and now they're working. The select board now is working to gauge public input, and they're going to be doing surveys. They're not sure exactly what it will look like because they were told they can't have a town vote, or it's not proper to have a town vote on whether to do the ordinance. You know how boards do the public the public hearing,
right?
So that would be the process, and then if 5% of the voters petitioned it, then it would trigger a vote.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So has the chief of police stated why he's so concerned about dispensaries?
Well, he thinks he has concerns about, I think he has concerns about what it will be, what it could, how it could affect children, sending that type of message. He cited what's happened in Colorado, and I think that's kind of his gist.
Mm-hmm.
He worries about what kind of message it's sending to the children, and he just didn't think it was. It was also because of how it's illegal on the federal level.
Mm-hmm.
He thought it might create a headache for his department.
I can see his point, but I have to admit I'm a little confused because the medical marijuana dispensaries, the state, that's a state process. And someone who wants to access a dispensary has to go through and get a card, and they have to go through their doctor. So it's a pretty controlled system in my experience.
Yeah.
So is that really what he's concerned about, or is he concerned about marijuana in general?
Well, he did say that he wants to see the federal drug administration approve, make marijuana legal before he had his town do, running an operation like that. So I think it's, he has a mix of concerns, and the zoning administrator, he spoke about how the town, how the why he asked why would the town give up this source of revenue,
Fair enough.
taxes, and then the visitors to town, what they might spend money visiting some of the other places around town.
Mm-hmm.
And so he thought it was kind of he suggested it might be a little foolish to turn the business away.
Now, you mentioned that the two people who are considering the dispensary are Wilmington residents. Why not just open the dispensary in Wilmington?
I'm not sure exactly. Actually, I think they had a site in mind in Dover. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, location, location, location.
Yeah.
And so what's the next step for this process?
They're creating a subcommittee within the town. The town clerk and the police chief have been working together on this. So now I expect maybe a select board member or two, and then maybe some members of the public will work on getting surveys together. And then they might have a public meeting where they discuss it and do the surveys, have the surveys completed, or they might just put the surveys in the mail or have them at the town clerk's office. It's still shaping up right now. But the police chief did bring ordinances from Rockingham and Newport,
Okay.
so it's not unprecedented.
And fair enough. I mean, it's a discussion towns. It doesn't hurt to have at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris and I are heading off to break. We're going to hand you over to Natalie Knowles, and we will return in, what do you think? Two shakes of a lamb tail? Half a shake of a lamb tail? Take a guess, Chris.
Two.
Let's go for two. We are back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KBT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 38 minutes past the top of the hour. And hey, Chris Mays from The Reformer.
Hey.
Thanks for spending this morning with me, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us, there's been some new developments at the Hermitage over in the Deerfield Valley area.
Yeah, the Hermitage Club says they have a financial company willing to lend them $26 million. The money would go to Berkshire Bank to pay off, to pay them to take over the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I told you last time, they're seeking foreclosure on a number of the Hermitage properties.
Right.
So this money would also be used for working capital to get everything going again and running. And it would also be used to pay off vendors and contractors. So, I found the documents yesterday in the civil court over in Newfane.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll be following up on that and seeing what comes next. They're trying to avoid having a receiver take over the property.
Okay.
They filed a motion to oppose appointment of a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
The receiver would have taken over business there and made sure everything was running and money was coming in,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be going to all the parties that are owed money and until the properties went to public auction.
Gotcha. So this outside entity that's willing to give the $26 million, why do they? are they part owners in the business or something? Or
Well, that's what we've been trying to track down. The document we found, it was a terms sheet provided by Wells Fargo Bank,
mm-hmm.
but it was a redacted document.
Okay.
So it just said finance company and loan company. And so it was blacked out, the name.
Okay. That's the mystery right there.
Yeah, it's kind of been on my mind all day yesterday and all day today so far. So we'll see if we can learn anything more about it.
Nothing gets a journalist's attention more than redacted information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets under our skin. It's like, no, I must know what that is.
I figure that we'll eventually find out. I'm just, it's just gonna be.
It's going to be time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I see something else about a change in... Maybe I'm confusing this with another article, and I'm sorry if that's the case, but is there a change in lawyers too?
There was a lawyer who, yesterday, that's why I was at the courthouse. There was a hearing, a lawyer representing the Hermitage Club and Jim Barnes, its founder. He was seeking to withdraw as counsel in 3 different cases.
Wow.
He says he hasn't been paid, so he wanted out. And so I was at the courthouse for that, and so the judge allowed for that. He thought that was that was a reason to withdraw, and so now I think the Jim Barnes and the Hermitage are given 30 days now to find new counsel in for these matters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not for the foreclosure.
Okay.
It's for a few different other matters.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you give examples?
One is a defamation suit. The other is an employee who says he's owed, more than $100,000 in back pay and other contractual obligations. And the other one was for a food vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So the former employee who's owed back taxes and the food vendor attorneys for them were in court yesterday. The defamation suit actually has Jim Barnes and the Hermitage Club as plaintiffs. They're suing another former employee who is actually first sued them for sexual discrimination and retaliation.
Wow. So what's next for the Hermitage? 30 days to find new counsel?
Yeah.
Okay. How a while ago you reported on how the state of Vermont had closed down parts of the Hermitage because it owed back taxes. What's happened there? Do you know?
Well, I'm gonna check in with them today, and I think they're supposed to get this bridge loan today.
Okay.
Maybe $220,000 from this loan company. So I'm kind of expecting them to start opening the doors up again and maybe get the golf course ready to open. That's kind of what I'm expecting to hear today, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know. Things can change on a dime out there in the news world.
Yeah.
What about, you also wrote an article recently about staff to student ratios, and for listeners who maybe just be tuning in, one of the things Governor Scott has proposed to bring down the cost of education in Vermont is the staff to student ratios. And he's talked about imposing fines on schools that don't meet certain ratios. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, I talked with a few of our local lawmakers. Laura Sibilia, she's in Dover. She's a state rep in Dover. And John Gannon, he's a state rep. He lives in Wilmington. And they were both very opposed to the idea. John said it was an attack on rural schools, and Laura said it was a horrible idea. And Senator Becca Ballant, she thought it was just kind of, she characterized it as something where the governor is just throwing something on the wall and seeing if it sticks, kind of deal.
Okay.
So yeah, they all have concerns about it.
A lot of the administrators I've talked to have concern with it too, only because it doesn't, the idea, while it might look good on paper and it's a very simple calculation, and simple math calculation, it doesn't necessarily take into account student needs.
Yeah. And my article looked at staff. It didn't look at student to teacher
Okay.
ratios. So if you were just looking at staff, I think the two high schools, Twin Valley and Leland and Gray, would have been fined for fiscal year 2017. And then a few of the smaller elementary schools like Jamaica, I think it was Halifax and Wyndham. Yeah.
And where did it look like they had quote unquote too many staff? Like too many people in the kitchen serving lunch, too many uh, secretaries answering the phone? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's what they're
that's what the
thinking.
governor
Yeah.
thinks. Okay.
I don't know about kitchens because sometimes that's an outside
True.
contract, so I'm
True.
not sure about that.
Hmm.
But I've been told by the governor's spokeswoman that this is just kind of an earlier proposal, that it's going to be part of a bigger plan around education and getting everything working in better order.
Which he is supposed, the governor said yesterday at the lunch with the chamber members that he would be releasing some kind of proposal to later today around education. I had one of the lawmakers who happened to be there, Tristan Tolino, express a little bit of frustration because he says we've actually been waiting for this proposal for months because we don't quite know what the governor wants us to do. He's sent out a lot of list of ideas, but ideas aren't policy,
Yeah.
basically.
And I think a lot of people down here are waiting to hear what's going on because, with the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, they're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Act 46 and without
Right.
the education secretary. Since her resignation, there's this big, what's going to happen.
Right, right. Well, someone actually did ask the governor yesterday at the lunch about that and saying, would you lean one way or the other towards either of the proposals? Particularly, I think this questioner was advocating for the alternative governance proposal, the one that was not voted down, the one that came afterwards. The governor's response made me infer that he didn't really know anything about the situation. And he says we'll leave it up to the agency of ed and the school board association, all those people. One thing that was interesting to me at the lunch yesterday, the governor spent quite a bit of time talking about moving beyond partisan politics and working together and having unity and those sorts of things. And yet, meanwhile, I'm having lawmakers say to me at the same time, saying, we've invited the administration to meetings. They won't come. Or if they do come, they won't give answers about what the governor wants. And it makes me wonder what kind of standoffs we will have at the end of this legislative session. Any issues as the legislative session ticks down that you'll be following, Chris?
One that's kind of obscure is the open meeting law.
Okay.
There's been some changes proposed to it. I've been
That's
kind of
true.
trying to follow that because some concerns were raised in Halifax over whether three select board members, a 3-member select board would be able to meet, not at meetings, and it was an issue because at town meeting they voted down having a 5-member board, and some of the select board members had implied that the law was going to change anyways, so they didn't need to do this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And some of the voters felt that other voters were misled.
Okay. Huh. Oh, that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the change to the open meeting law is going to be?
I forget offhand, but I think it had something to do with being able to meet and and discuss business.
Oh, interesting. Because the law right now basically says if you have a quorum,
Yeah.
whether it's a quorum at the kids' soccer game, that you're not allowed to talk town business. Because if there's a quorum, then that should automatically be an open meeting.
Yeah.
And the public has to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that could change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since Halifax is a smaller town, they've had a 3-member select board, and they've voted on this or brought it up at different town meetings over the years since I've been here, which is 6 years. So there's kind of a split in town between people who want to increase the number of select board members and people who don't.
Right. Yeah, I seem to remember the issue of the number of select board members coming up a lot in Halifax.
Yeah.
Well, and they have a point. I mean, if the quorum for a 3-member board, a quorum is 2, which in small towns could be a trip to the gas station or the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be very easily that 2 of them are in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you reporting on tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
The select board meeting. And just before I let you go, any other stories you'll be following this week that people should pay attention to?
Yeah, I talked with Congressman Welch yesterday about the federal funding coming to Vermont. We're expected to come to Vermont for opioid
Fantastic.
treatment. And so I'm kind of trying to get a sense from other groups what they might get out of it, or, what might see increases.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a new restaurant opening downtown, a halal place.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going there today to meet with the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I shouldn't forget to mention the Memorial Hall in Wilmington. They're going to start their season up of shows.
Oh,
On
great.
Saturday.
They have some good shows.
Yeah, it's a lot of tribute bands this year. So,
Okay.
They're going to be doing Neil Young, Van Morrison, Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke's daughter is going to be there, and she's going to sing her dad's song.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I look forward to reading all those articles when they're finished.
Yeah.
Chris Mays, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.